Good morning. I'm going to give you a short tour of a Harrow allotment site. It will probably last about 10 minutes. There are approximately 30 plus allotment sites in Harrow, and the number of plots on each site vary from as little as 5 up to over 50. This site here has 45 plots, and as you can see there are secure gates on the outside and a fence all the way round. The gates are secured with a padlock, either one that is operated with a key like this one or by a combination padlock. Now we're inside the allotment site. I'll show you around some of the plots. As you can see from this first one, there is some an apple tree and some beans growing, and around here you can see another one where there's some roses and some other flowers and a small pond to encourage wildlife, in particular frogs, that will eat the slugs and help keep the slug population down. It's very useful also to try and encourage other wildlife like hedgehogs who also eat slugs, so people then don't have to rely on using slug pellets. Further around here you can see somebody's built a rather rickety greenhouse. Well, this is not really a structure that's allowed on the site, especially as it uses glass and can be a health and safety hazard, not just for other plot holders, but also for children that come onto the site. And if children do come onto the site, you bring your children onto the site, make sure you keep them on your own plot and keep a good eye out for them, as there are a lot of health and safety hazards on allotment sites, not only rickety buildings like this, but there's also bits of used metal and wood with exposed nails and also potholes in the ground. You can see this plot holder is growing some various types of squash here, and you've got a number of compost bins. It's very useful to try and recycle your own waste in compost bins, and it adds good extra nutrients to the soil once it's broken down. All throughout the site you can see most of the paths between plots are very well looked after. This is done by the plot holders themselves, who are responsible for maintaining the paths between their plots, and you'll see this on the allotment site rules that Harrow Council give you when you get an allotment. Here this person's growing some runner beans. She's also got a few flowers over there, and started to dig over and remove where she was planting some peas. This plot holder, you can see, has got some ground covered with some black plastics to try and kill off the weeds and the roots of the couch grass that might have been on the plot before they start to dig it over later on in the year, or perhaps early next year. This site has a nice little shed. Sheds are allowed on allotments, but you have to get permission from the council, and they have to be a certain size. Otherwise they become intrusive and take up most of the plot, which is not very useful. This plot has got a mixture of flowers, tomatoes, has got some beans, and as you can see a bit further on here, there's a row of beetroot, a row of cucumbers, and some more tomatoes, which you can see are starting to ripen up nicely. And the back there they've got some climbing beans. The plot next to it, there is, he's set this up a slightly different way. He's got various beds with brassicas. Oh, there's some nice looking cauliflowers here, with lots of grass between his beds. And behind him you can see there's a plot that's not actually being cultivated at the moment. That's in quite a good condition, because some of the plot holders nearby have tried to keep the grass under control. Later on this tour you'll see there's some other plots where the grass isn't so well controlled and is really overgrown. And these sort of plots, if you get one of these plots, which is more than likely, because that's what the council are letting at the moment. It's very hard, well, it's quite difficult to start and cultivate. But as we've seen before, if you put some big black plastic over it for a couple of months or so, it helps to kill off the roots of the couch grass and makes it easier to dig and cultivate. The plot holder here hasn't made a very good job of cultivating their plot this year. They've got a little bed here with some sweet corn and some tomatoes, and a little grass area in front of their shed, and another grown patch there, and they have some fruit trees on the border of their plot alongside the pathway. It's best to keep these pathways clear and not obstructed, as a lot of people or plot holders use them to get in and out of the site. This plot certainly needs a lot of work doing to it. There's a half plot here that's just been let, and the person has skimmed the grass, ready to either cover it to help kill off the roots, or to dig it up straight away. And beyond that, you can see the other half of this big plot that hasn't yet been taken is still covered in quite a lot of grass, and next to him, or next to it, you can see some more overgrown plots. Around the edge of the site, there used to be more plots, but these have got overgrown, especially with brambles and things. It's good to give a nice barrier to the ends of the houses, and I'm sure the householders welcome that. But also, at some stage, with a lot of work, those plots could also be brought back into existence. Dotted around the allotment sites, you'll find water taps. These are in fairly easy distance of most plots on the site, and you pay a charge for this along with your main rent for your plot. You're not allowed to keep a sprinkler on, and if you're using a hose, you should be holding it all the time to water your garden. And when there are hosepipe bans, obviously you can use this tank that catches the drips to fill up your watering can. On this plot, the chap is growing some beetroot. He's got some small sunflowers in the background and some sweet corn here. He's also got a nice area here where he's got some tomatoes. These tomatoes are not yet ripe, but they will ripen up soon, I'm sure. And further down, he's got a patch of cucumbers, looking very healthy. I'm not sure I can see any fruits on there yet, but I'm sure there are some. And a bit further down, he's got some potatoes he's yet to harvest. And below his potatoes, he's growing some courgettes, although he's let these grow very big, as you can see here. This one looks more like a marrow. These are a white variety of courgettes. In fact, he doesn't seem to have picked any of these, and all of them have turned out to be large marrows. This next site has got some soft fruit at the end, some gooseberries and some rhubarb, followed by some courgettes. These, as you can see, are more manageable sizes. These are different varieties here. There's some white ones, some normal green type ones, and some yellow ones. And next to here, he's got some cucumbers growing up some frames. And a bit further on, he's got a couple of rows of beetroot growing some leeks, and a whole bed of onions. Behind the onions, there is a patch where he's growing some asparagus. This is obviously past its best, and asparagus you usually pick between the middle of April and the middle of June, and then let it grow like this before cutting back in the autumn. Next to the asparagus, there's some little cherry tomatoes which are ripening up nicely, and a patch of mint which has gone to flower. And next to that, he's growing his brassicas, a variety of kohlrabi, kale, Brussels sprouts, spinach, etc. I can see in there, and it's covered up like this with netting to stop the pigeons destroying the brassica plants. At the top of the plot there's some Bortoli beans growing, the last remnants of some mange tout which need picking out and pulling up, and at the back there a patch full of Jerusalem artichokes, and next door to that some compost bin. This plot here has a nice selection of vegetables and flowers. Around the central flower area with sweet williams and daisies, there's quite a lot of courgettes, a few beans, climbing beans at the back, and a patch of herbs further down where there's basil, lemon balm, sage, etc., and they have some tomatoes and gladioli in the distance. On this plot there are lots of climbing beans, some runner beans, some French beans, a batch of tomatoes, some sweet corn. Further down a patch bordered by some sunflowers which are a little past their best now, and inside there's various squashes that are being grown, some spaghetti squash and some pumpkin looking squash, some rather sizable ones there, hidden by the leaves, and over the side here some Japanese variety squash, and at the back you may just be able to pick out some green squash. This plot here has got a little seating area on wood chip with a few carpets to sit out in the summer, and he's using raised beds where he's got some broad beans and some mint, a patch of onions which mostly have been harvested, and over the back here, which seems a little overgrown, he needs to cut the grass a bit round his plot, some potatoes, some onions, some tomatoes and some winter squash, heading back down towards his compost. Here's an example of a plot that's just recently been taken over. The chap has covered it up with weed suppressant matting, which he's going to leave on for a few months to try and kill off the grass and the roots. And further down he's dug a little patch where he's planted some potatoes. And beside him the chap has been shielding from COVID-19 and has only just recently come back and been able to cut back the grass, but it's probably too late in the season now to start cultivating anything. This plot here has got a mixture of fruit trees. If you are growing fruit trees you must make sure they're the dwarf variety, some leeks, various raspberries, patches of grass where I think he was growing some broad beans which is now cleared. He's got some quite nice looking tomatoes here which are starting to ripen up. He's also got a brassica cage with rather thick netting over his. I think these are Brussels sprouts and various other types of broccoli, etc. And next door there's some spinach which has fortunately gone to seed a little. Here's a rather disorganised looking plot, needs a bit of cultivation on here to get back the weeds, etc. They have a few fruit trees and a few sort of raised beds with some beetroot in. There's a few tomatoes over there. I think in the past they were trying to grow some exotic vegetables like lentils and chickpeas. I don't know how successful they were or whether they're doing so this year. This person is also growing some pumpkins. You see they're looking quite large at the moment and very nice, and he's got some Brussels sprouts covered with some netting over there, and in the background you'll see some raspberries and four little areas of, well, actually 5 little areas of sweet corn and some runner beans. This person has got a little brazier for having a bonfire. Bonfires are allowed on the allotment sites, but only between the 1st of October and the 31st of May. Any other time it's rather disturbance to other plot holders, the householders who live in the houses neighbouring the site, and also the park, which you can see over the way, which borders the allotment site. I'm gradually coming to the end of the tour now. I've walked around most of it. I shall just show you a few more plots up at the top end again. This plot holder had been growing some potatoes and has started to dig them up. Still got a few more to go. Some rather late looking tomatoes and a few sweet corn. And he's got a patch of raspberries there. You can see he's got his canes, etc., and a small shed. And in fact, this plot with a small shed looks very idyllic. It's got some flowers, some sunflowers, some nasturtiums, some dahlias over in the background, and areas for vegetables, of courgette there, some strawberries, a small apple tree, a gooseberry bush, and some sweet corn. And I'll move over towards the area where they've got some nice sunflowers, some nasturtiums, some nice healthy looking tomatoes there, some runner beans, and some lovely looking dahlias. So, and beside there's a rather overgrown plot, but this may be due to the fact that the person was shielding from COVID and hasn't yet to come down. So that concludes the tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are interested in getting an allotment, you can go and look on the Harrow Council website under allotments, or you can go to the Harrow in Leaf website, which also has an area on and explains how you can get an allotment in Harrow, and provide some little leaflets giving tips on how to cultivate your allotment. Thank you.